Welcome everybody back to Tide Pod. Jack Knowlton, Tony Sakalas, your favorite writers from Tide Illustrated, with I think second straight week here, Tony, of a sort of emergency pod, or at least a breaking news pod. Very conveniently to take everyone watching and listening behind the scenes. We were about to start recording the show here, your typical show, kind of recap the first official visit weekend for Alabama, particularly talking about Keelon Russell's visit and do some little speculation, what it could mean if he commits. And then he went out and committed right before we started recording here, Tony. So we have a little bit of breaking news. Obviously, when you're listening to this, you'll have already seen. But Keelon Russell has flipped from SMU to Alabama, becoming Alabama's quarterback commit here in the 2025 class. Huge pickup, Tony. This is a name I think Tide fans will have known for a while now. Alabama offered him, I believe, back in April on his birthday. And then took an official visit here this weekend. That clearly went very well. He heard all of what he needed to hear and now commits here on Tuesday, June 4th to, solidify the Tide at the quarterback position, which is, of course, a position that you could say half filled in 2024. They lost a commit, got a guy in Austin Mack. We'll talk a little bit about that. But Tony, Keelon Russell, he's the number 47 player and the number 6 pro-style QB in the class, has gained a ton of buzz, was committed to SMU for a while, now has flipped. What do you make of it? A huge get here for the Crimson Tide.
So a future trivia question, hopefully a future easy trivia question for Alabama because he'll become a notable player. But Keelon Russell is the first quarterback commit out of high school for Kalen DeBoer at Alabama in the Kalen DeBoer era at Alabama. So that's kind of interesting. They were, you could almost count Austin Mack, who reclassified and redshirted at Washington as like a member of this year's class, but he isn't. He's a transfer. He's of age. I think that this is a big thing for Alabama's 2025 class. It's a big thing moving forward. You look at the 4 quarterbacks Alabama has now. This is quarterback number 5, but obviously he won't be here until next year. You have to think that you're going to lose Jalen Milroe to the pros, most likely after this year. So then you've got, Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, and Dylan Lonergan. And so this would give you 4 again. But, in today's climate, you're not even sure if you're going to have that. So I think this at least gives you probably 3. And that could be a really big deal. And he's a great player from a really big school up, near Dallas and Duncanville, one of those Texas powerhouses. He plays with a lot of talent. He plays with, at a school that has high expectations. And he's a kid that, he probably needs to polish off his game some, but is somebody that, can do a lot of things, has a lot of raw talent. We'll have to see how he continues to develop, but a lot of tools there. A lot of reason to be excited. He's a 4-star kid, but like one of those high 4-star kids, top 50 kid. So it's pretty exciting for Alabama. And now they have a quarterback in the 2025 class. It's always easier to recruit, when you have that quarterback there, that kind of like that main, player recruit. And so it'd be interesting too to see how Keelon kind of, kind of steps into that role. And maybe does he, become the leader in the recruiting class of trying to get other people to come to Alabama.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting how, officially shuts things down. I mean, you don't often see players flipping, multiple times unless maybe it's a flipping back or a coach leaving situation. But, it benefited Alabama, I think, to have the first official visit. He had trip slated to, I guess technically Alabama the second official visit, first one of June. He went to Ole Miss. That had reportedly gone really well. And he was also set to go to Florida and Oregon. Haven't fully confirmed yet if he is canceling those trips. You would like to think that he probably is if he's already, confident enough in announcing his decision. But assuming those trips are canceled and Alabama showed him more than what Ole Miss had to offer, I think, that's a huge selling point, a huge win for Kalen DeBoer and Jamarcus Shepard. I know he is obviously a big fan of what they did at Washington and how they kind of ran things there and put quarterbacks in the NFL. Adam Gorney, the Rivals recruiting director, had a comparison to Jaden Daniels, and obviously another guy who did take a while, starting off at Arizona State and then in his final year at LSU really showed what he could be and became a top 5 pick. And Russell, I think, is at a better stage almost, at this point and then coming into Alabama, learning under DeBoer, you'd have to think the sky's the limit for him if that comparison can come true. So just a massive get. I know, Tony, you compared him about where he was ranked with someone like Jalen Milroe, who of course has the, kind of hardworking, nature to become better than what his ranking out of high school is. But you look at the quarterback room in general now, like you mentioned, it is pretty deep. That was something I was going to ask you where, they get Austin Mack, obviously lost Julian Sand. He was a Saban casualty, unfortunately. But, you have Ty Simpson, Dylan Lonergan. Obviously, you're likely going to lose Milroe after this season. You have Austin Mack. And now you throw Russell into this mix. I mean, that's about as strong of a quarterback room depth-wise as you're going to get.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, now you're probably going to lose some, though. That's kind of like what I said. I'd expect someone to transfer. Yeah, Alabama kind of lucked out and didn't have a transfer this year. It probably won't be as lucky. I mean, they're definitely – I'd be absolutely floored if none of the quarterbacks left. I just can't see either. Jalen Milroe's – the more likely result is that Jalen Milroe is going to, go pro, going to have the year – if he has a year like he did last year, he'll probably, he's got so much potential athletically that I think there'll be NFL teams lining up for him. Let's say even if Jalen Milroe struggles, heaven forbid loses the job, then I feel like he probably ends up transferring to another program to make it work, So like, I don't think Jalen Milroe's coming back to Alabama. This is his last dance with Alabama. It's probably his last dance in college football. So you've got him out of the picture next year. You've got, Ty Simpson's going to be probably stepping in, but even then, he'll be higher in terms of years. What will he be like? He's a redshirt sophomore this year, right? So he'll be a redshirt junior next year. And I think I've got that right. So other than that, does one of the Austin Mack or Dylan Lonergan, does one of them leave the program? And then you probably need that third guy anyways. So I think getting Keelon Russell is going to be big. I don't expect him to come in at Alabama and start right away, but that's probably going to be beneficial to him. He'd probably be able to kind of build himself up and be ready for it. He's definitely somebody, though, that's, got a huge potential ahead of him. And, he will help to add that depth. We've seen what Kalen DeBoer does with quarterbacks. It'll be interesting to see, he'll have a couple of them now in Austin Mack and Keelon Russell, who he's worked with, their entire career. And I think that will probably help as well.
Yeah, definitely. He is technically the second highest ranked recruit in Alabama's now 11-man 2025 class. He is 2 spots below Duke Johnson, the 4-star linebacker out of Georgia. So a tight race there. Obviously, there will be more Rivals 250s that get updated, and we'll see, where those things shake out. And you'd have to think, like Tony said at the top, he plays for Duncanville, a good season there, probably has him climbing up the QB boards. But I think you're right. This is just a massive get heading into, the rest of June. I mean, it comes off of the first official visit weekend. There's still a long way to go here, even in the summer kind of recruiting stretch before we get into the fall, where even more names will come up. There's a ton to keep track of. We've got it all on the site, for subscribers. But yeah, just a massive get, Tony. Keelon Russell in flipping him from SMU to Alabama. Like we said, he's just getting a ton of buzz. And so it's like, it becomes more of an open race. Obviously his head was turned away from the local school. So a huge pickup there for Alabama. I mentioned it's during this first official visit weekend, which was, of course, started on May 31st on Friday, went to June 2nd. These players were there. Ton of names. There was a dozen guys on campus, couple of commits, and I guess now fellow commits with Keelon Russell, who joined him. Latsier Brooks was in town. Zamir Smith, 2 guys out of the East Coast. Brooks is a receiver. So actually now, Tony, Keelon Russell's Alabama's second offensive position commitment, we should mention too.
Sure.
Or a third, with Anthony Rogers, the running back, Latsier Brooks. Yeah, I forget. Everyone forgets about Anthony Rogers, who also will be a name to watch. He took an OV to Ohio State, and that reportedly went pretty well. He's been committed since.
Look, Ohio State is such a they're tough to beat now in the recruiting realm, both in terms of transfers and they're on top of it with NIL, and I mean, like that's going to be a tough school to beat. I mean, did you see the locker room that they came out with?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw that, but it was just like they've got a lot of money up there in Columbus, and so and it's a good program, so it's going to be tough to hold on to players. But Alabama has a lot to offer as well, and I think DeBoer is also showing that you mentioned some of the kids that they had on campus, and the 11-man class. I think you're starting to. This is around the time where Alabama kind of picks up its steam, and you're kind of see them making that move. And I think anyone that was kind of worried about Kalen DeBoer, he's kind of showing like, yeah, he's still recruiting the way that Alabama recruits. So I expect Alabama to end up with another top 5 class. It seems like that's the momentum it's kind of heading to, and things are looking good right now. I mean, take it one recruit at a time, and this is a good one to take at the time. But I think there's a lot of optimism in the program, especially after last weekend. I think things are. Alabama just tweeted a picture of Kalen DeBoer next to a race car and said, "What did it say? Keep it rolling" or something like that. I think things are rolling in the right direction though for Alabama.
Yeah, they've got the cold summer mantra on Twitter, which Tony and I were talking about on air. Well, we think that could tee up some maybe digs from the opponents, but
also I just hate it because it's like 90 degrees outside.
It's also not cold.
It's very much not a cold summer in Tuscaloosa. We need to try again. It's very deceiving.
Very ironic. But with Anthony Rogers, going back to him, I mean, he'll be an interesting one to keep following with his commitment. He's been committed since the summer of 2023, which is of course under Saban. So he's bridged the gap of the coaching change, but I certainly don't I'm not shocked to see that he's exploring some of his other options. But Latsier Brooks and Zamir Smith, who are there, Alabama is currently the only places they're set to visit. So they seem pretty locked in so far. Another couple big ones I mentioned, they had a 5-star running back, Jordan Davison, who's out of Modern Day High School, another powerhouse that Alabama fans will be pretty familiar with.
Unlikely Modern Day to Alabama pipeline is kind of like becoming a thing, right?
It really is. I mean, you go back to Bryce Young, and now you have obviously Zabian Brown, the 5-star corner this year, and Damani Jackson was at his days at Modern Day. So Abdul Sanders is another commit in the 2025 class who's at that school. So Jordan Davison has plenty of people to talk to. They also had Chuck McDonald, a corner who goes to that school down this weekend. So you just might as well bring the whole team. Just pack them on a plane, get them on down to Tuscaloosa, and let them roam around.
It's a good pipeline to have. I mean,
it is a good
I mean, I don't even know if this is the right thing, but it's like almost like the IMG Academy of the West, maybe, and not necessarily the same thing. But if you talk about like the amount of like talent it pumps out, that's a great pipeline to have. So getting kids from that school and beating USC to that school, I mean, is a big deal. And USC is also, we talked about Ohio State, but USC is another school that's really in the right direction. So I mean, like you're pulling these kids from Mater Day, from Duncanville in Texas. You're competing with a lot of big powerhouses at states that also have NIL players, like really big time programs. And I think that's says a lot about the job that Kalen DeBoer and his staff, his whole staff, Courtney Morgan, Nick Sheridan was the primary recruiter with Keelon Russell. So, I mean, credit to him as well, so it's really a group effort, but I think that they've done an excellent job so far. And I think they've kind of proven some of the doubters, the naysayers, if you will, wrong a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a good pipeline. So in addition to those guys, Modern Day commits to 2 others I'll mention. Jamarion Morrow, who is out of Memphis Melrose in Tennessee, was one of the biggest risers on the Rivals 250 newest rankings, jumped, I think, almost 150 spots up. Another running back option there. And then Ty Haywood, who is a borderline 5-star. I believe he's the number 21 player in the class, an offensive lineman, also out of Texas, plays for Denton Ryan, which is pretty close to Dallas, Duncanville area where Keelon is. So his head was turned by his official visit to Alabama. They were kind of slipping in the race for him a little bit. They had a really good official visit with him and now are a little bit more back in the mix. He grew up an Alabama fan. So the tide of that going for him as well. So
Denton
Those
Ryan
aren't.
is where that's where they got Drew Sanders. I mean, obviously they ended up working better for Arkansas, but still, that's another big, like you said, another big Texas powerhouse. So
Yeah.
you establishing those kind of pipeline. I wouldn't necessarily call Ryan High School an Alabama pipeline, but still, it's a place where if you start building some momentum there, I think it's going to pay off over the
Well,
years.
I think it goes right into your point of Kalen DeBoer is making the inroads in the right places that people want to see him make inroads in. Whether it's out west at a school like Mater Dei, whether it's in the South with some of the in-state and even Georgia commits that he's managed to ring in guys like Duke Johnson and Luke Metz, who I think are kind of the two of the premier guys out at linebacker. So I think that goes into your point, but. Yeah, Ty Haywood definitely is one to watch. These players aren't coming and going. These are going to be names that should stay in the brains of Alabama fans, even after their official visits here over the summer and through the month of June. And then just a quick roundup this weekend, obviously another official visit trip. Got my eyes on 2 more commits will be in town. Duke Johnson, who I mentioned already, and then Jadon Harmon, another linebacker commit. We have now that they have 11 commits, I can no longer say that half of the Tide's 2025 class is made up of linebackers.
There was a string of them though, right? Wasn't there like 4 or 5 in a row or like something like that? Like
they have 5 in total. 5 in total, and even have some eyes on a couple more. So they're strengthening.
It seems like they were like building an entire team at one point of linebackers. I know it's just the way it worked at that time, but
they are strengthening. And then 2 more running back targets I'll keep your attention on. Shakai Mills-Knight is a good running back, and then Bo Jackson, ironically, relation that I've read to the great. I don't want to, make any Gumps mad. Obviously, Bo Jackson was a great running back, but of course for the other in-state school. But I don't believe there's any relation to this one.
We just need to have like Bo Jackson do. I wish there was like a Joe Namath that played for Auburn too, just to like make it even weird. It's just but having Bo Jackson, play for Alabama and score touchdowns. Imagine Bo Jackson winning a game for Alabama in the Iron Bowl or something like that. That would just be so weird.
Very ironic. But yes, the 4-star running back who is well known mostly because his name is Bo Jackson. He is also an excellent player. He will be in town. And then another offensive tackle prospect I'll bring everyone's attention to, Michael Carroll. He's out of Pennsylvania. He's a Penn State legacy. His father, of the same name, I believe, also went to Penn State. But Alabama's in pretty good position for him. Like Ty Haywood, I should have mentioned this when I mentioned him, they do not have an offensive line commit yet in the 2025 class. So that is a position that they are trying a lot of players out and looking to see who they might get there. But Michael Carroll's a talented 4-star. Michigan's another heavy contender there for his services. So there's some names. Obviously, there'll be there's more guys. I believe they have close to a dozen confirmed visitors again. So staff is getting busy. We'll be busy as well with all the content to keep you guys updated on who's going to be in town. I have received a report, Tony, maybe a bonus breaking news. Keelon Russell reportedly is not set to take those other official visits to Oregon and Florida.
That's big. I mean, I kind of expected, but that's big. That means that we talked about him being that recruiter, that kind of leading force, that wouldn't hold weight if he's visiting other schools. I think you're going to see him become the leader of this class, and that'll be really big. It'll be big for, establishing himself as a leader, among his 2025 classmates, which will help him when he comes on campus. They'll already see him as a leader. That will be big. Obviously, Alabama fans it will endear them to them. So it will help Alabama as well, because it's one thing to have coaches talk to players, but if you have an elite player at the quarterback position, nonetheless, doing some recruiting for you, that always helps. So that's great news for Alabama. One, for locking in Keelon, but then also for, I think, what it's going to mean in terms of future recruitment.
No doubt about it. Well said. So Keelon Russell becoming the quarterback commit here for the Alabama Crimson Tide in their 2025 class. Let's segue, Tony. We'll finish the show, the pod off on a little bit of more of a fun note. want to revisit one of your columns, which is up on Tide Illustrated, everyone should go read it. There's a certain video game coming out. I think we've talked about it a couple of times on this show that will occupy, I think, our July when, recruiting maybe will slow a little bit heading into fall camp. And obviously the news cycle might not be as lively considering there's no more basketball scholarship spots to fill. And
the bad news is,
like
though,
that.
The bad news is, though, Jack, is that it's going to be released right on the end of SEC Media Day. So we're going to have all that content, and then we're going to have this game, and we're just going to have all this stuff to write about. And, I might delay gameplay a little bit.
Yeah, might have to delay the start time. But if you don't know the game we're talking about NCAA Football 25, the first iteration of the NCAA, the great college football game in 9 years since 2014. Or since NCAA 14, which technically came out in the summer of 2013. Tony, you wrote a column, and a good one, I thought, of you took a look at, Alabama players that fans and gamers would have missed out playing with in the years between NCAA Football 14 and, of course, now this new game coming out where everyone can play with Jalen Milroe, Jeremy Bernard, all those fun players here next season. So I want to ask you this: of the ones on your list, and you can go through as many as you'd like, but which one of those is the favorite from your list that you say, damn, I wish I would have, had the chance to use this guy and win the Heisman with whoever?
Well, look, it's not necessarily, a lot of these players that I mentioned were the best players during that time span, but really I picked the list of who would be the most fun to play in as a video game. And I put number one on my list is Jalen Hurts, just because I just think that his skill set would have been so fun. Not only was he fast, not only could he juke, he could just run people over. I loved that about Jalen, of just how tough he was. I think, if you just use the Alabama version of Jalen, I don't know if the passing stats would have been as great, unless, as compared to maybe the Oklahoma version of Jalen. But I still think it would have been really fun. You could have done some things too. You look at that, was it the 2017 team? Was that his last? Yeah, that was his last year. You could have just done some really fun video game stuff, like run the wishbone and have triple option or something like that with him, Najee Harris, Damian Harris, and Josh Jacobs. You know what I'm saying? Or you could just try to really, Alabama never really gave Jalen necessarily the offense that Oklahoma did. Could you imagine you getting to play head coach, right? You could do that and see if you could kind of replicate that same kind of success. So I just think it'd be fun to play with Jalen Hurts. He's a Houston kid. I'm a Houston kid. So I've always kind of thought he was a fun player. There's some players too that just lend themselves to the video game as well. Najee Harris was so about the hurdle that it'd be so fun. It's so satisfying to be playing against a friend and just drop that, I play Xbox. So the Y button, or if you play PlayStation, the triangle button, and just hurdle with Najee Harris. It'd be it'd be like the Leonardo DiCaprio, meme where he's pointing, it's just you want to be able to do that, what you've seen in real life. And on the other hand too, I think the fun about video games is doing stuff that really doesn't happen in real life. And so you talked about winning the Heisman. I know Bryce Young beat out Will Anderson for the Heisman, but I would actually like to go and win the Heisman with a defensive player. And I would have tried to see how many sacks I could get with Will Anderson. And then I would have also probably tried to help his cause a little bit, maybe put him at running back or tight end and get him a few touchdowns to maybe see if that pushes
a two-way player.
Yeah. So that'd be fun.
Yeah, I liked the entire list. There's definitely some I was like, oh, that would have been good. The guy I picked off of yours, another Jalen. I know it's obviously fun to use a quarterback and a running back. You get to control him a little bit more. I would have wanted to use Jalen Waddle in this game. As someone who, I wasn't on the beat yet when Jalen Waddle was here, and I just watched him, kind of from an outside perspective every day. He was one of the most fun players I've probably ever watched play football. He was just so fast, just game-breaking speed.
Kick and punt returns.
Kick and punt returns, unbelievably unstoppable. Just his speed. I'm a speed guy. I think he would have been my guy that I would have used. Okay,
I had a wildcat with Jalen.
Yeah,
with Jalen Waddle, and just done a speed option or something like that.
So 2 more for you. We'll do this one first. current Alabama player that you are most excited to use on the game? I think you already kind of talked about him. There's
If like yes, okay, there's going to be a theme in these questions. There's something, yeah. Like obviously, I'm all about quarterbacks. I'm all about mobile quarterbacks in this game, and like I think Jalen Milroe is going to be not only the best player like on Alabama, he'll be the best player in this game, the most fun player to use. I think if I could do this list of uh of the everyone I just mentioned, I'd still rather play with Jalen Milroe. He's just going to be so fun to play with, man.
Mhm.
Because he's even faster than Jalen Hurts, but he's still tough. He's got the juke moves. I mean, and then he can throw the deep ball as well. So like, if you draw too many people in, which I think he's going to be a cheat code, and where you're going to have to draw people in to stop him, then you just go deep and you just burn him with maybe a Jeremy Bernard, and you just throw it deep because he's going to have a really strong arm. It's going to be a cheat code. He was like built for a video game character. It's going to be very Lamar Jackson-ish, I guess. But yeah, I definitely would pick him. I think I'm that's like the reason why I'm buying it, is just to see what it's going to be like to play with him.
Yeah, I like it. I went for a defensive guy when I was thinking about this question. I'm gonna go with Damani Jackson out at corner.
Okay.
Now I have a problem when I play a football game. I like to do a lot of user corner actions, which usually doesn't work.
Yeah, I
I
was
should
gonna say
probably let
that's
the
pretty
CPU.
tough. Like,
No, yeah, it is, and it's not a very smart decision for me usually. But this prompted me to go rewatch some Damani Jackson highlights. And first of all, I think he's going to be an excellent player for Alabama. I think he's going to fit really well as a boundary corner guy. But he in high school at Mater Dei, which we talked about in the first segment, he was just so good at making good breaks on the ball and coming up. I just think the way he does it and just the way he plays corner, he's very aggressive. He's a good tackler. I think I'm just going to enjoy that as a guy who, likes to take some risks sometimes in the secondary. Usually, I'll probably make him look like a bad corner, but when I do pull the plays off, I think it'll just be fun. I'll just be snagging interceptions with Damani Jackson. So I went with him.
maybe you
just
could
to shake it up.
a guy that's like a good tackler too. If you're gonna like user play with someone, like maybe like a Malachi Moore, because then you can just like
Mhm.
blitz. Like he's a guy that can kind of come in
Yeah,
and do some of that.
as a nickel.
Maybe you don't get burned as bad if you can come in and blitz and do it. Take advantage of his speed and tackling. So that might be another one for you to watch as well.
That's fair. And then last one. So in the 9 years between when these games came out, other than Alabama, what's one player just in college football in general that you would have enjoyed just using on the game that you just loved watching during that era?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna stay on brand here. I think I mentioned him too when talking about Jalen Milroe, but Lamar Jackson is like so good at Madden.
Yep.
It's like I'd want to see him in this game too, because you got to think like all of the speed. Like one of the things I mentioned when we talked about Jalen Waddle was like he's like I think 98 speed, 97 acceleration, 97 agility or whatever. But like if you those are his Madden stats, if you took that and put it on the college level, like you're giving 99s to like all of these. Lamar Jackson would just be so tough to stop, and like I don't even know if I'd even ever throw the ball, just take advantage of his
Just
speed.
you just try to do the recreate the one clip of him in high school where he stops right on the sideline, like looks at
Right.
the kid and walks in the end zone.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'd be that person that would just like piss off everyone, like because I'd do the same play and you couldn't stop it. Um, but yeah, I think it'd have to be. I'm not a great college football player either, so I'm one of these guys that would like probably try to just like spam like the turbo button and just really try to take advantage of
Highlight plays.
the natural speed of the player instead of my skills as a game player. So yeah, I'm gonna take Lamar Jackson there.
That's probably just the right answer objectively. I think you can't go wrong there. I mean, he was electric. I'll shout two out, and I'll give credit to you for reminding me of this one. I think Christian McCaffrey would have been fun because I think he just would have been like just a super beefed up running back. Like he's fast, he's elusive, but he can also like run through you. I think, and I like doing a lot of running plays in the game, like and going off with running backs. So I think he would have been fun. And then one I'll share, obviously, Alabama's playing Wisconsin in the future. I would have loved to use any of Jonathan Taylor or Melvin Gordon.
Ooh, Jonathan Taylor would have been a good one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Another
Jonathan
like
Taylor.
tough back, like
Mhm.
and for
He
the
just
people
would
that
have.
are wondering why we didn't like mention this name, Derrick Henry. So one of the stipulations of this list was if you were at all involved in the any of the other games, I didn't put you on. And I think a lot of people have like responded to this column and been like, "Oh, Derrick Henry, that would definitely be yes, Derrick Henry. If you're gonna include him, because like the Heisman version of Derrick Henry would have been amazing,
Yeah.
A lot of the same reasons why you're picking, Jonathan Taylor. But I think that like what I felt like he was a freshman that last year, and so like theoretically, I guess you could have used him in the latest version of the game, and just had him progress. And so
Mhm.
I didn't include him.
We
So that's
didn't. You didn't extrapolate his. Yeah. You
yeah,
went purely based on all right. It was his freshman season, and
he's
freshman Derrick
in.
Henry probably wouldn't be. Yeah, and he's in the game, so
Yeah.
I think that's very fair. I think that's a fair stipulation because you are right. He would be. That would be very very fun.
Or he would
Yeah.
have been he would have been halfback number they never had the names,
Mhm.
right? So he would have been halfback. Actually, at
Oh
that
sure.
point, he would have been halfback number 27 because he hadn't changed
Mhm.
his number to 2 yet. So,
There you go.
yeah.
Deep cuts. Yeah, so there you go. There's some fun players. I'd say yeah, McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor. I'm trying to think of anybody on defense that was kind of late on. Derek Stingley from LSU would have been fun. He was just a
Yeah.
great corner. You mentioned Kool-Aid and Terrion in your article, I think, or at least Kool-Aid.
Anybody that you could use like on the defensive side that could also, like so Kool-Aid
Jalen
is a guy that can do
Carter.
punt returns. That would be fun.
Yeah.
A few people that like didn't make the list from an Alabama standpoint that like really should have gotten some consideration. Like Jonathan Allen had a really
Mhm.
good year. He was a really good defensive end / defensive tackle. Quinnen
Eh,
Williams was another
I know
person.
like yeah, I like to play with defensive linemen when I'm like controlling the defense.
Yeah,
So
so
like that would
maybe
be
one of
fun.
those two. I probably should have
Yeah.
put. Well, I did put a defensive lineman because essentially Will Anderson is one. So,
Yeah.
and you'd be using Will Anderson more often than not as a defensive end. So, but yeah, I think Jonathan Allen and Quinnen Williams were like just missed the cut, and that's more
Yeah.
so because I like playing with offensive players than I more so than defensive players.
It's who your mind goes to first. I think you had a very fair list. So put in the YouTube comments who you'd want to play with from a an older Alabama perspective and who you're excited to see. I think I saw the highest rated quarterback is going to be Shador Sanders from Colorado, which makes sense from a EA maybe wanting to give him the
I
Colorado name a
guess,
little
but
bit.
like, I wonder what Georgia
I
fans
don't
think about that with
I don't know
Colorado.
how official that was. I thought I saw something somewhere, but that
Yeah.
might not be
I mean,
true.
he'll be another fun one to play with. I mean, he's right up on my alley of people to play with.
Travis Hunter will
I
be
think Travis Hunter should be
fantastic.
like a 90. Like, is there
Yeah.
anybody on this list that's like a 99? I think it's got to be him, right?
Yeah. In
If
terms
there's
of
a
the new game,
99
yeah.
club or whatever, I think it's got to be Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
Um, especially because like Travis Hunter would be someone like I guess we didn't do players from this year outside of Alabama, but
That
if
you'd
we're
look forward
doing
to.
that, I'm picking Travis Hunter because I just want to do both sides of the ball, like have him play corner and have him play receiver. Like
I'll be biased if I was picking this a little biased to my alma mater here for picking a this year player. I'd probably pick Luther Burden just because he's a run after the
that'd be
catch
another fun
guy.
one. Yeah.
You throw him short passes and just juke people out in the open field.
Yeah. No, that'd be a fun one. Like Ohio State is gonna just be fun to play with.
Judkins would be fun.
Yeah, just like that whole like juggernaut of Ohio State is going to be fun to play with.
Yeah.
A few people we didn't mention. Like, there's some things that I included, like being able to play with Tua and like maybe turn down the injury slider.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be like probably gratifying for Alabama fans, not having to worry about if he gets hurt. Although I did hear that this year's version of college football, like I was watching some of the gameplay that got like released, and there's going to be like body damage or kind of like
wear and tear. Yeah.
Yeah, the wear and tear thing. So like if you're being accurate with Tua at Alabama, like his wear and tear levels would be like way. So maybe not that. And then the other thing too that I thought, so Bryce Young is not a running quarterback, but he's fast. And in a video game world, you could make him a running quarterback because a lot of that's just like that's not what he does mentally. And I would like to just like explore what Bryce Young would be if he tucked it and ran a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the wear and tear version is, but like typically you could get away with a lot more hits in a video game than if Bryce Young got smacked by a 250-pound defender in real life.
Yeah, I saw the wear and tear stuff, and I think a lot of people are hoping to turn that off when the actual game comes out. I think people want to have.
I don't need to be playing a game and like Jalen Milroe get hurt.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I'm playing the game.
Yeah, I tend to turn injuries off just because it's more fun. And hey, it's injuries off for everybody. It's not just your team. So, you're not
especially if you're somebody like me and you picked like Alabama or Colorado to play with a running quarterback. And no offense to Ty Simpson, he's a great quarterback. And actually, Alabama's in a great position. We talked about the depth at quarterback before. Like they're in real life, they're in a great position, or as great of a position as you can be if Jalen Milroe was to get hurt. In a video game, if you're like somebody like me that needs to rely on Jalen Milroe's speed, you're not quite getting that from Ty Simpson. Not to say that he's slow, but he's just definitely not going to be the cheat code that Jalen Milroe is going to be in this game. So that would really throw me off if I'm trying to base my whole game plan on having the fastest person on the field, and then I no longer have that. I don't need that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Well, like I said, put in the comments who you're excited to use from Alabama or anywhere else, I guess, if you for this game, and maybe any throwback Alabama players that would have been fun. That was one thing. I know there's the ultimate team mode. I would like to see them put, if they have like cards like they do in other ultimate team modes for EA, put a throwback collection. Maybe you have some of those players. Maybe put a Derrick Henry and
that would be
Will Anderson.
really fun.
That would be fun to use. I think there's some rights issues there. I think you have to I think there's like weird things to clear is the only problem when I was thinking.
That would be really great to can you imagine playing with like the 2020 Alabama team with, Najee Harris and Devontae Smith. We didn't even mention Devontae Smith. And he's on the list. But we didn't mention him in the podcast. Yeah, I think I put him at like 7th on my list. The thing about Devontae Smith, there's some players I feel like the video game version of themselves doesn't do them justice. Like, can you really accurately depict Devontae Smith's, savvy route running as well in a video game? Maybe you can. It's just not going to be as satisfying. I do think that he would have probably gotten like 99 catch. That guy, made some absolutely just crazy catches.
Yeah. Good shouts. Yeah, he was electric. But yeah, excited for the game to come out, and obviously it's an exciting time for Alabama in real life now. Keelon Russell will be in a future iteration.
He will be in a video game.
In a couple of seasons, and hopefully it's suiting up well for the Crimson Tide and taking that mantle under Kalen DeBoer at quarterback. Big news for Alabama. We'll obviously have all the coverage for him and headed into the summer with other official visits and any maybe college football 25 updates if we feel like sprinkling those in moving forward. So plenty to subscribe for, all great things. Until then, see you guys next time.